This is Twit.
Somebody in the chat room said, I thought this was a good question. Is Tim Cook Apple's Steve Ballmer? Ballmer at Microsoft made it very well. He made a lot of money. Microsoft was very successful, but not in the way that mattered in the long run under Steve Ballmer. Is Tim Cook that person? Andy, what do you think?
I don't think so. Probably just because of the culture inside of Apple. It's not the problem. Wasn't just Steve Ballmer. It was the culture inside of Microsoft, which was to really make everybody internally, exactly, fight with each other as hard as possible, and not necessarily for the benefit of the company, but for the benefit of their own projects or their own units. So I don't think that at all. There is a. I suppose you could now ask a question: if the person whose business brain was formed out of the problems of how do we get components from where they are being made to where we need them to be manufactured into products, and how do we get these products shipped from A to B? That's what he. That's why he was brought into Apple, and that's one of the big things that he's been bringing to the company ever since. You could ask the question of, does he still have the right brain for a company that's going to have to transition into a business of electrons instead of just actual hardware? I don't think so, once again, because of the culture. Sometimes, however, if you really need to make a huge change, sometimes that really does come with a brand new person right at the top. Not because the other person is doing a bad job, but because this new person doesn't have any preconceptions over where the money comes from. But I think that if one bad quarter and one letter and one all-employee communication from Tim Cook caused the stock price of Apple to go down that badly, imagine how badly replacing Tim Cook would be. I don't see any problems that Apple is having that is solved or helped by swapping in Tim Cook. We might see some new vice presidents come in. We might see a slight reorganization. We might see some projects move from one person's house to another house, but I don't think there are any problems that could be solved by moving Tim Cook into an emeritus position.
I also think that their next, quote-unquote, next big projects have probably taken a little longer. We've seen the rumors of stops and starts, the glasses, the car. Those were things that would have, been a big push, and they've had a lot more trouble getting those out the door than, at least that's the rumor, that they've taken longer to project because they're hard. And so I think that we're going to see those things still come out. I think I think that they've got a good future, but I do think that Apple needs to expand what they do. I mean, there's ways for them to redefine how those, how these markets work. I still think I'm going to say one thing that I've said a couple times, but I'm going to say it again, is that if you look at something like iBooks, I think iBooks was a big failure on Apple's part, partially because they just wanted to make a bookstore that was like Kindle. And well, they gave it a whole bunch of new tools, but didn't prove that how to use those new tools to make it really compelling. And they did the same thing they did with HomeKit, which is that they went to Pearson and they went to all these publishers and asked them to make iBooks. And of course, these guys, couldn't think their way out of a box. And so so they just created the same book with a couple of moving videos, as opposed to redefining. It was a bad
business offer. It was a bad offer for Pearson. It was,
I agree. It was a bad offer for Pearson. But Pearson, what they should have done is hired. They should have built the first set of books. And set the pace for how far you can push that technology, as opposed to going to an established group. In the same way that HomeKit is not good for a lot of the established folks, Apple should have innovated that area and then forced them to move forward. The iPhone, Apple couldn't have tried to persuade people to do something with the iOS. By creating the phone, they forced the entire industry to move a certain direction. And I think that when they don't do that, it doesn't work because people can't see that far.
That's a consistent problem. When Apple keeps creating products that work great, so long as you buy a whole bunch of other Apple stuff, you are limiting your market to people who have already invested in Apple or already have an emotional level of faith in Apple. You have to create a product that lets people solve their own problems. That doesn't involve going to the Apple Store. And once again, if I have one worry about Apple's ability as a company, is that What do you do when you have to build something that has to work with something else and you don't know what that something else is going to be? That's a really hard problem to solve, and most other companies have been dealing with that for the entire lives of the company. Whereas Apple is, okay, we'll create our own messaging standard. Okay, well we'll create our own connectivity standard. Okay, well we'll create our own system, and they can create all kinds of our own publishing system, and they can promote all kinds of very, very rational arguments for why their system is better. But for someone who, because of their own preferences or because of their own budgets or because of other technical needs, they can't buy the iPad that's required to run this textbook, all these advantages, they can only be admired academically from a distance. So I really think that Apple has to figure out how to coexist in a larger world without making their products suffer as a consequence.
I just think that their ecosystem has to be large enough that it makes sense. I mean, you look at if we agree that 200 to 300 million people are willing to pay for that interconnectivity and everything else, I don't think Apple needs a market bigger than that. I think that and they could literally, the thing is that you keep on tying those folks in because there's a lot of people out there, and admittedly, I mean, I have an Android phone, I have PCs, Linux, a whole bunch of other things, but the core of my life mostly revolves around a Mac experience, and I don't really. I just want it to work
for you, but there's no way Apple's going to say, "Oh yeah, stock market, we're not going to grow. We just got these 200 million people. We're going to be happy."
No, grow it, but I think that
they are saying services, which is about one of the few things.
But there's a lot of us that the kind of person buying the Apple phone is someone who's paying a lot of money for a lot of other things that Apple could encroach on. So the thing is,
the stock market though want them to grow into new markets, new territories?
I'm saying they can. That group
just by doing that.
But the thing is that's a group of people that have disposable income, that are paying for those margins, that are. I mean,
I think Apple says no. We got to find new markets, and that's why they're looking at self-driving cars.
But I think
I agree. No, but I'm saying they're taking that 200 to 300 million people and leveraging it into new markets. I completely agree with you that that's what they need to do. I think that they need to grow into lots of new markets with that group of people, because there's a lot of things that we buy, and I think that that's if the music has stopped, and if I was going to stop the music right now, I would want to be the company making 30% margins, not companies that are making 1% margin.
Yeah, 38% is what they're making.
Yep.